Welcome to episode 6 of the Kori J podcast. We had some breaking news happen today, especially in the NBA. Jimmy Butler has requested a trade from the Minnesota Timberwolves. News broken by Shams of The Athletic. And we have the announcement of Space Jam 2 with LeBron James. And also yesterday we had some big news as well with Josh Gordon being traded to the New England Patriots. So I'm going to touch on all those hot topics in this segment and just give my thoughts and opinions on each of the news that was broken over the past couple of days. So let's get it going. Jimmy Butler. For those of you that haven't listened to my podcast, I predicted this Jimmy Butler trade would happen back on episode 2 when we were discussing the Eastern and Western Conference standings for each conference. And in my standings, I had left the Minnesota Timberwolves out of the playoffs. And my reason for that was I had a prediction that Jimmy Butler would not finish the season as a Minnesota Timberwolf. And what do you know, today, after his meeting that he had with Tom Thibodeau, Jimmy announces that he would like to be traded from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, in this report, there were 3 teams that was listed where Jimmy Butler was supposedly signing an extension with. And those 3 teams were the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Knicks, and the Los Angeles Clippers. So I definitely thought those 3 teams that he chose were interesting, being that all 3 of those teams will have a ton of cap space in the 2019 offseason. And it was definitely a little questionable, I could say, to say the least, being that those are not really contending teams at the moment. You know, maybe they have a plan in place, which I'll get to in a minute, with Jimmy Butler possibly teaming up with another star in one of those locations. But at the current moment, they're all just big markets with a ton of cap space, you know. But let me just talk about the Wolves a little bit. I mean, I think the writing was already on the wall. If you all have been paying attention from some of the reports that have been leaked from last season and just this summer about the Minnesota Timberwolves, there was reports that, you know, Jimmy wasn't quite fond of Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins. And I think that was confirmed today after the news had broke that Jimmy asked for a trade. Andrew Wiggins' brother tweeted, you know, hallelujah. So I think that pretty much confirms that there were some tensions between Jimmy Butler and Andrew Wiggins and maybe even Karl Anthony Towns. You know, Jimmy has had a history of kind of getting into it with some of his teammates. I'm sure my Chicago Bulls fans remember when, you know, Jimmy Butler and Derrick Rose had some tensions as well because Jimmy wanted to be the guy and, you know, sort of be the man that kind of take the throne from Derrick Rose during his tenure in Chicago. So I don't think Jimmy is the easiest guy to play with. You know, he does the man a lot, and I do think he wants to be the man on the team. You know, obviously going to Minnesota, I think Towns was kind of that guy that was the franchise player there. And, you know, they were trying to bring Wiggins along to be a star who I think has kind of, you know, he hasn't lived up to the hype that was expected of him being the number 1 overall pick. So with the disappointment that Wiggins has been and Towns clearly being the franchise player there, I just think Jimmy wanted to move on and go to a bigger market where he can be the man and possibly team up with his best buddy, Kyrie Irving. So I definitely thought the teams that he listed were interesting, you know, with the Nets, Knicks, and Clippers. Because, you know, again, none of those teams are contenders. They haven't won anything in recent memory. And the only logic I can put behind him going to one of those teams is either A, he just wants to get paid, you know, his max money. And, you know, be the number 1 option where he can take all the shots and, you know, be the face of a franchise. Or option B is, I believe that, and this is my theory, I believe that him and Kyrie Irving, his best friend buddy, may be planning to team up together on one of these 3 locations. Now, there's already been rumors that the Knicks would be the spot for that. There's rumors that Kyrie wants to play in New York with the Knicks. And maybe Jimmy, if he does get traded there, that's where they could possibly team up at. But I definitely think with them being really good friends that there may be some interest there for them to want to play together. And, with those three teams, they would have that possibility to do that. Even if it's with the Brooklyn Nets or the Los Angeles Clippers, all three of those teams have set themselves up to have cap space for next summer. So they could possibly get, 2 max free agents. So that, that could be Jimmy Butler and Kyrie Irving. Or maybe Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard. Who knows? But I don't think they have the relationship that Jimmy Butler and Kyrie Irving have. So I definitely would think that would be the pairing that is more likely to happen. Even though I do think Kyrie Irving is in a great situation. He's got arguably one of the best coaches in the league in Brad Stevens. He has great young talent around him with Tatum, Brown, Horford, and Hayward coming back. So I don't know why Kyrie would even leave the Boston Celtics. But then again, you can't really put anything past him at this point because he did, leave LeBron James and that situation where he was going to the finals every year. So who knows what Kyrie Irving is going to do, but I definitely think Boston will be in an interesting predicament this year, especially with the Jimmy Butler trade request, depending on where he ends up. And I think that's something that will be monitored throughout the season. As far as Kyrie Irving, how does he fit in with those younger guys, making progressions in Tatum and Brown and him trying to integrate himself back into that offense with also Gordon Hayward coming back. So it'll definitely be an interesting story to watch. Jimmy Butler, he's a great two-way player, an elite defender in his league. He can get to 20 points on a nightly basis. I do not think he's a top 10 player, but I think he's in the second tier of stars. I don't put him in the superstar category with the LeBrons and Kevin Durant's and Steph Curry's. But I think he's in the second tier of stars with guys like Paul George and players who I don't think can be your best player and you win a championship. So I do think Jimmy Butler is more of a second option guy. I don't think you can win a championship with Jimmy Butler as your best player. But he still would be a great addition for any of those three teams if he is, in fact, traded to one of those three teams. I know the reports now are that Tom Thibodeau doesn't plan on trading Jimmy Butler at the moment right now. But the same thing was said about Kawhi Leonard and Greg Popovich, that the Spurs weren't going to trade him and that they were going to hold on to him. So, that's always said. But at the end of the day, a trade is going to be made eventually, whether they like it or not. So they're going to have to take the best offer for them. So, he may not necessarily go to one of his preferred destinations. He could end up like a Paul George situation where he, a surprise team comes in and he goes to the Thunder or whatever team that may be, and they have a year to try to convince him to stay. So, you never know what's going to happen. He can always end up on a team that nobody's seen coming, and maybe they do convince Jimmy Butler to stay. But that team would definitely be taking a risk with Jimmy Butler being on the last year of his contract and him being eligible to be a free agent in the summer of 2019. So this is definitely some interesting news as NBA training camp opens up next week, I believe. So this is definitely, right before the beginning of the season, basically, with training camp starting. So it'll be interesting to see how fast the Timberwolves move on making a decision to trade Jimmy Butler. And yeah, another thing, I think some people were a little surprised that he didn't mention teams like the Lakers, the Celtics, and the Sixers. I mean, those are, I think most people would think, 3 playoff teams that are sort of trying to contend. So I thought it was a little interesting he didn't have one of those 3 teams listed as a potential team that he would like to be traded to. And from a Lakers standpoint, I kind of understand. I didn't think they were going to go out to Jimmy Butler anyway, because if they didn't trade their young assets to get Kawhi Leonard, who's one of those tier 1 superstar players that I was talking about, then why would they trade their assets to get Jimmy Butler? That doesn't even make sense. So if people thought the Lakers would try to make a trade offer for Jimmy Butler. I don't think that's likely. I could be wrong, but I just can't see the Lakers going all in on Jimmy Butler when they didn't do that for Kawhi Leonard, especially with both of those players being free agents next year. So I don't really see the Lakers fit with Jimmy Butler as much as some may see it. There has been reports that Jimmy is not fascinated with being the second guy behind LeBron James, with LeBron already being the cornerstone in LA. So I just don't think LA is going to be a likely destination for Jimmy, period. But it's just a little shocking that I thought the Celtics may possibly entertain a trade. They still may entertain a trade for Jimmy Butler. I know they have an abundance of wings there already, but if I could swap Gordon Hayward for Jimmy Butler, I would do it. If that's what's going to help me keep Kyrie Irving, I would definitely entertain it as the Boston Celtics. And the Sixers, I still feel like they're a star player away. You do have two superstar type like players in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, but if they can get a third guy like Jimmy Butler, that would be amazing in their race to being one of those top teams in the East. So, but I don't think they will be willing to part with the assets as well, because they didn't part with the assets for Kawhi Leonard. I think the Spurs were demanding Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, but they could have possibly thrown in Dario Saric or Fultz possibly in the deal, and got them that way. But I don't think the Sixers will be super aggressive as well, and trying to get Jimmy Butler as well, being that they weren't one of the three teams listed, and that they would be taking a risk as well, having Jimmy Butler on a 1-year deal with the potential of him leaving in the summer to go join someone else. So it's definitely risky for any team that's not mentioned, but we'll just have to see how everything plays out and analyze it from there. Moving on, we had some other breaking news announced today in the NBA. LeBron James has finally did it, people. Space Jam 2 is on the way, and it will go into production in the summer of 2019. Now, I can give you some of the details that I have already on it. The movie is supposed to be directed by director Terrence Nance and director Ryan Coogler. Now, I don't know too much about Terrence Nance, but just some background on Ryan Coogler. He's one of the youngest and most talented directors in the game right now, With him being an African American, I'm definitely excited for Ryan Coogler landing that role. And, he's famously known for his direction of the Black Panther film that broke box office records. So Ryan Coogler is a very talented director, and I think him working with LeBron James is going to be awesome in this Space Jam 2 movie. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be upset thinking this movie is a sequel to the first Space Jam, but it was reported that this will not be a sequel to Space Jam 1. So I guess this will be some sort of branch off of Space Jam. It'll still be the Space Jam characters with the Looney Tunes, but from the looks of what I read, it's not going to be a continuation or a sequel to the first Space Jam. So I know a lot of Michael Jordan fans are upset. No, how could they remake Space Jam? It's ruining my childhood, blah, blah, blah. But let's move on. It's a Space Jam 2 with LeBron James, and I think it's going to be definitely very exciting to watch. And I think it'll be interesting to see what NBA players will be included in the movie, because we know in the first Space Jam they had Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewing and a variety of other NBA stars that participated and had their powers taken away. So I think it'd be pretty funny if LeBron included a guy like J.R. Smith. And, I don't know. It'd be pretty crazy, though. Like, J.R. forgetting to score against the Monstars or something like that, and they lose. But I think that'll be great content and hilarious. But we'll see what stars will be a part of the production. But obviously, we're still a while away from that movie coming to theaters, as it won't go into production until 2019. So I'll keep you updated on any major news on that if it comes out. But I just wanted to talk about that, and I think it's a big announcement for something that's been in the works since 2015. where LeBron James had struck a deal with Warner Bros. Back in 2015, and he purchased the trademarks to Space Jam. This was 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. So this has been something that's kind of sort of been in the works for a while now, but now it has been officially announced, and it seems like something that's going to happen. And we even have the directors as well. So definitely a big hit for LeBron James to get Ryan Coogler for this project, with how successful Black Panther was and the production behind that. So we'll have to wait and see. But I definitely think it's going to be a great movie, and something I'm definitely going to go see when it comes out. So we'll see about that. Moving on to the NFL. We had a huge trade announced yesterday in the NFL, where former Cleveland Brown wide receiver Josh Gordon was traded to the New England Patriots. And I know what you're thinking. The rich get richer again, man. The Patriots just keep finding a way to rob these teams. And let's just talk about the history real quick behind Josh Gordon. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns drafted Josh Gordon back in the year 2012. And for those who may have forgotten, Josh Gordon was a superstar wide receiver his first 2 years in the league. I mean, he was Odell Beckham-like with the amount of production and statistics that he was putting up without a good quarterback. I mean, the Browns had some terrible quarterbacks, and he still put up 1,600 yards, with 7 to 8 touchdowns. So Josh Gordon is a special, special talent. Well, at least I think he's still capable of being that superstar wide receiver that he was those first 2 years in the league. Now, as many of you know, Josh Gordon has suffered with an addiction, and he has had his off the field issues with marijuana and weed, and he has been suspended multiple occasions for violating substance abuse policies. So he's on his last strike in terms of his NFL career, with the problems that he's had off the field. But I think you couldn't ask for a better situation for Josh Gordon. I mean, you go to a team that most people probably had as the favorite out of the AFC to make the Super Bowl, in the Patriots. This is a very successful organization. You got arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, and Tom Brady, who has 5 Super Bowl rings. And you already have some talent there in Gronk, and Julian Edelman should be coming back for Week 5 after he served his 4-game suspension. So imagine adding Josh Gordon to that team. I mean, they're going to be a problem for many defenses trying to cover those guys and trying to decide on who you're going to double. Because if you double Gronkowski, you're letting Josh Gordon go one-on-one on the outside. So, and then you add Julian Edelman, who was a very successful receiver in the Patriots system. So once they all get on the same page, and if Josh Gordon can keep his head on straight and just sort of focus on playing football, that's a hell of a steal for the New England Patriots. Now, as far as the trade, the Browns received a 5th round pick from the Patriots, and I believe the Patriots settled on a conditional 7th round pick, which is if Josh Gordon plays at least 10 games for the Patriots, the Browns will just get the 5th round pick that the Patriots sent. But if for some reason Josh Gordon doesn't play those 10 games, the Browns get the 5th round pick, and then the Patriots will receive a conditional 7th round pick back from the Browns. So it's all subjective to whether Josh Gordon is going to be active for those 10 games or not. But man, I mean, just let's look at the Browns' perspective for a second. You've dealt with all of this nonsense and stuff that Josh Gordon has did the past 6 years, and he had these substance abuse violations and suspensions, and you didn't cut him then. So I just think it's a little strange now, where it was reported by Adam Schefter that Josh Gordon had injured his hamstring during a photo shoot. So I don't know the truth to all that. I don't have the details on that, if there's any truths or lies there. But it was reported that he got injured at a photo shoot on the weekend, and he showed up to practice hurt. And the team was questioning him, oh, how did you get hurt when you were just fine yesterday? So maybe there's some trust issues there with the Browns and Josh Gordon, but it just seemed a little strange that you invested all this time into getting Josh Gordon back on the field. You stuck with him throughout all the suspensions, and then now the photo shoot hamstring strain is what led you to cut him, or not even cut him, trade him to your rival in the New England Patriots in the same conference that you're in. So I don't know about the Cleveland Browns, but again, it's the Cleveland Browns, so I shouldn't be shocked that they gifted the Patriots a very talented receiver who I think still has. So I know he, again, he hasn't been on the field a lot in previous years, so we haven't been able to see if he's still capable of producing at the level that he once was capable of producing at. But in the one game he did play this year, he only had one reception, but that reception was a touchdown. So I still think Josh Gordon is definitely a threat, and he's only going to get better as the season goes on because these are his first couple of games on the NFL field in a while, and the more games that he plays, the more comfortable he's going to get at running those routes, and he's still going to be a problem for those DBs trying to cover him. So just a huge deal for the New England Patriots. Tom Brady definitely needed a weapon right now with Julian Edelman being suspended, and Gronk is kind of the only focal point in the offense without the Patriots having that many receiving weapons. I know they have Chris Hogan, but he's not necessarily a top-tier receiver. But huge steal for the Patriots. I think it'll definitely pay off further in the season when it comes close to the playoff time. As we know, that's what the Patriots are really playing for. This is a process for the Patriots. Every year we talk about the Patriots early in the season. Oh, they lost. They're 0-2 or 1-2, whatever the case may be, and they still end up in the playoffs at the top of the season. So never count the Patriots out. They're going to always be at the top of the conference and competing into the AFC Championship game or whatever the case may be. And with the way these other teams are falling apart, like the Steelers, who many expected to meet the Patriots in AFC, I don't think they're going to even make it with the way the season's going for them right now. So Patriots definitely probably will be the favorite again to come out of the AFC, especially with the addition of Josh Gordon. And if he can just give them his commitment and effort to being who he once was, man, I might pick them to win the Super Bowl this year. That's how special of a talent I think Josh Gordon is. And I still think he has something left in the tank to prove to everyone. So kudos to the Patriots for once again robbing the Cleveland Browns from a talented wide receiver for only a 5th-round pick, by the way. I mean, there were other teams interested. They said the 49ers and a couple other teams, I think the Eagles, who had offers in place to trade for Josh Gordon. But I was just really surprised that the Cleveland thought that the 5th-round pick was the breaking factor. Like, oh, my gosh, we got a 5th-round pick offer. We got to trade him now. They really jumped at that 5th-round pick, which is not really great value for a talent like Josh Gordon. So the Browns lose that trade. Obviously, the Patriots win that trade as long as Josh Gordon can contribute something. If he doesn't play at all, then it's a different story. But I think he will play, and I think being in the Patriot system where Bill Belichick has a no-tolerance system where he holds players accountable and they just win football games, that may be the best situation for Josh Gordon, especially after being in Cleveland for the past 6 years, where it's a culture of losing. Now he's in a winning culture, and he can just focus on being Josh Gordon, the football player. So I think this will definitely help him out and maybe change the perception of his career. I want to thank you all for tuning in to episode 6. I didn't want to go too long on this episode. Just wanted to touch on the breaking topics that happened over the past couple of days. Thank you all for listening. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment, and you feel free to debate me in the comment section. This is Kori J signing out at episode 6.